Hey, check it out. I need everybody to follow the fucking rules.
We have to address this in a way that is about giving resources based on equity.
We can afford, I know I'm being banged up by the Republicans, but
renders it unconstitutional on its face before it's even enforced.
California has officially made it illegal for doctors to question anything that the official COVID narrative is. Also, Joe Biden's loan forgiveness debt transfer has a huge snag. Kamala Harris getting hammered for saying, well, hurricane aid should be divvied up by race. And more coming up on this episode of Daily Caller Live. My name is Jobob. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
2, 1.
Here we go!
Might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually their name, Jobob.
From the dingy back, they're completely cut out from the outside world, except for you fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in on today. It is October 3rd, the year of our Lord 2022, a Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. People who didn't have a great weekend is doctors in California. We're going to go big on that, so if you don't care at all about your freedom of speech being taken from you, especially if you live in California, or are worried that the precedent set in California is going to permeate through the country, you can go ahead and skip this. If that doesn't matter to you at all, it doesn't, we're going to go big on it, but you can go ahead and skip forward to latter part in the show. But if for some reason you think that that is a huge problem, as I do, we're going to go ahead and talk about it a lot. So California had a bill circulating in their assembly and obviously passed their Senate as well for like the last 6 months or so. Again, I know most of you watching are probably not in California right now, don't live in California. We appreciate you watching all over the country. But California being the most populous state in the union, the things that it does impacts the trajectory of the rest of the country. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, who's definitely running for president, likes to say often, California leads the way. If California is leading the way in censoring doctors in their ideas and the ability to think critically, that is not a direction that the rest of the country should go. But that's what's happening in California. The California Assembly Bill 2098, which passed the Assembly, the houses of legislature in California earlier in September, got signed into law by Governor Gavin Newsom, I believe on Friday. And here's what it does. Effectively, it doesn't allow doctors anywhere to question the official narrative of the COVID-19 virus. Now, you may be thinking, well, the official narrative of the COVID-19 virus has changed 100 times since it was officially unleashed on the American people. Yeah, that would be the problem. Now, I'll go into exactly what it does. It allows the state to punish doctors, including disciplinary action and restricting and maybe even suspending their license to practice. But I want to get to the kind of the free speech component of this first. There was a really, really, really eloquent defense of not, but counter to this bill. This lady was in front of the committee that was hearing this bill and made a beautiful argument as to why this law is insane. Now, this was before it was passed. She was urging people to not pass it. It did pass and it's now signed into law, but what she said is still very, very relevant because it's actually what's going to happen as it is now California law. Watch this clip from the Senate committee hearing, again in California, regarding this insane new law just signed by Governor Gavin Newsom. If you haven't already, I think this is very, very important, especially if California were to set the stage of the rest of the world. If you wouldn't mind clicking the little share button or the little like button, either one works great, or let us know in the comment section what you think about doctors now no longer being able to say anything except the approved dialogue set forth by a bunch of bureaucratic doctors at the state level. We'll get into all of that in a little bit. Watch this clip from this lady just tearing down the reasoning behind this. It's a little bit long, but I think it's super important. Check it out.
Californians for Good Governance is a nonpartisan group, but speaking personally as a lifelong Democrat and a civil rights attorney, I am dismayed that Democrats are bringing forward bills that undermine civil liberties. I appreciate that the committee recognized the First Amendment problem presented by this bill, but tweaking the language cannot remedy the problem because it's baked into the DNA of the bill. The purpose is to restrict speech based on its content. And our Constitution simply doesn't allow that broad infringement on speech, even if the speech is false and even if the intent of the law is compelling. The analysis states that the constitutionality would depend on how it is enforced, but the mere potential that it could be applied in a way that chills speech renders it unconstitutional on its face before it's even enforced.
So did you hear the beginning of that? She said, as a lifelong Democrat, and then went on to say, this bill is insane. Governor Gavin Newsom signed a bill that will subject doctors to discipline and possible suspension of their licenses to practice for spreading misinformation about the COVID-19 pandemic to patients. One of the most controversial pieces of pandemic legislation lawmakers have sent to his desk. Assembly Bill 2098 by Assemblyman Evan Lowe D. Campbell was co-sponsored by California's Medical Association to tamp down COVID-19 misinformation often spread through social media, promoting untested or ineffective treatments and cures and questioning the effectiveness of face masks and the vaccine. So the CDC, by the way, remember, the CDC does not recommend face masks anymore. I think, I don't know, somebody fact check me on that, but I'm pretty sure the CDC is like, yeah, face masks isn't really a thing anymore. Actually, yeah, no, it is, because the FAA, who piggybacks on the CDC, the federal flying people, eliminated masks on airplanes, like 6 months ago. So yeah, masks are no longer a thing, but even in this law, if you question the effectiveness of face masks as a doctor, not only on social media, but in a private room with a patient, and that patient reports you to the state, you can face disciplinary actions or have your license suspended. This is from the California Medical Association. Many healthcare professionals, including physicians, have been the culprits of misinformation and disinformation efforts. Here's the problem. Being wrong is not illegal. Also, lying isn't illegal. The First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America makes that very, very clear. And if lying was illegal, let's just say some doctor has malicious intent and says, well, if you put bananas on your feet for 6 minutes every third hour of the day, you'll clear the COVID out of your system. That's not illegal. Maybe it's some huge ethical problem for saying something that ridiculous, but it's not illegal. And if lying were illegal, I would imagine all 435 members of the House, 100 senators, and everyone in the administrative executive branch would be arrested immediately. So that's a problem. This lady goes on to continue, and I'm sorry I don't have her name in front of me, but she continues to lambaste the ridiculous laws. Watch this.
It would discourage conscientious doctors from expressing themselves freely about a topic that is fraught with uncertainty due to its novelty. Quoting the U.S. Supreme Court, regulating the content of professional speech poses the inherent risk that the government seeks not to advance a legitimate regulatory goal, but to suppress unpopular ideas or information. Doctors help patients make deeply personal decisions, and their candor is crucial. The remedy for speech that is false is speech that is true. This is the ordinary course in a free society.
So obviously the huge problem here is how many times the official COVID narrative has changed over the course of the pandemic. It's changed substantially and a lot, varying from polar opposite sides. It's not like, oh, here's a little tweak that we're making, here's a little tweak. No, remember when they said, face masks, you don't need to wear them. And then they went, well, you gotta wear 3 of them. And now we're back to, it's fine. Varying from the most extreme sides, that's how much this thing changes. Also, and I don't want to necessarily put down doctors that work for the government or bureaucratic physicians that work in Sacramento, for instance, or even Washington, D.C. or Atlanta, where the CDC is based. Well, I guess there's no other way of getting around criticizing them. Generally speaking, people who work for the government and not private enterprise are not necessarily the most capable. And again, I don't want to sound like I'm belittling people's jobs, but the doctors and physicians that are at the top of their class generally go into private practice and make $1 bajillion. And maybe there are people, maybe there are doctors that go into the government bureaucracy that are the smartest, the best, the top of their class, and they do it out of the goodness of their heart because they want to make a difference. But generally speaking, that is not the case. And even if they are the smartest in the room, going into that sort of field has some sort of Napoleon complex of, I want to be able to dictate to other people how they should live their lives. Now, I wanted to play this clip. Now, watching videos, actually, let's get to some comments. Some of the comments were actually pretty interesting. Daryl says, I wonder what, and they wonder why people are leaving the state. Yeah, seriously. Maria said, same in Canada. Yeah, that's interesting. I would expect no different than being in Canada, because Canada is, well, just as crazy as the communist state of California. Beverly says, doctors will be leaving California. Can't blame them. Julie says, get out while you still can, Jobob. Yeah. So not to go into this whole other diatribe of stuff, I do live in California, if you don't know that already, which is part of the reason why these stories come to my attention. And I don't know, we seem to talk about California politics quite a bit, but she's not the only one. Jack says, so free speech is illegal in California. Any disagreement with a frown on and against law politically, I'd be moving out of there ASAP before the camps get set up. So a lot of people saying, hey, leave California. I get it. I understand where that's coming from, and I don't blame all the people for leaving, but I grew up here. I was raised here. I live here. I own property here. And I would be remiss if I were to leave the state without putting up a decent fight, which is what we're doing now. We're pointing out ridiculous things that are going on at the state level in hopes of making some sort of difference. Because rather than leave California, I would like to see it completely shift back to the reasonable state that elected Ronald Reagan as the governor. Remember, California didn't always used to be crazy like this. When going through the footage of this, we also kind of get a taste of how these lawmakers act in real life. This is the dude. I don't know what the rules are in the committee, but this is fascinating that this lawmaker just snapped. This is a dude who was giving a comment, I guess, in the Assembly committee hearing about this bill that, again, makes it illegal for doctors to question the quote-unquote science or the narrative set forth by the bureaucratic doctors in Sacramento. This is what the assemblymen, well, this dude said, hey, this is going to happen, yada, 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 yada. The assemblyman in charge of the committee then lost his temper in a way that you don't see a lot of people do unless they're unhinged, crazy people. Watch this clip. If you haven't already, would appreciate you clicking the little like button or the little angry button or the little laughy button, because what you're about to see is kind of comical that this guy is the chair of a committee. Or click the little share button or do both. That would be really, really helpful. Or give us a comment in the comment section. Let us know what you think about Corruptifornia passing a bill that makes it illegal for doctors to question the narrative. Watch this clip of how the chair of the committee reacts to somebody who doesn't agree with him. Check it out.
I oppose this bill, and anybody who supports this bill will be held accountable under Nuremberg codes.
Thank you very much.
Be warned.
Thank you very much.
We are watching very
closely. Thank you very much. Hey, check it out. I need everybody to follow the fucking rules. Give your name, an organization you're with, and your position on the bill.
Jeez, so people are laughing. That guy's mad. That guy's name is Mark Berman, I believe. He's an assemblyman from Palo Alto, California, who has his social media profiles on private. Because clearly, if you're that unhinged, now this took place a couple months ago. It kind of made the rounds a little bit, but didn't really get national attention. But that guy losing his cool. Hey, check it out. I need you to follow the effing rules. You can't lose your temper like that, dude, especially if you're trying to be the higher end elite society that is better than the peasants that are coming to the microphone. If that's the role that you're trying to fill, losing your cool about a guy saying, hey, I don't agree with this is not a good look. Again, I would tag him on all of his social media accounts, but for some reason, you can't get a hold of that particular assemblyman. Maybe we'll read out his office line in case you would like to complain about the way that he handles his constituents. Let me see. Let me know in the comment section. All right. This is Dr. Drew, who wouldn't necessarily call a conservative by any means, but he is a doctor in California and had some comments on this. I know we've been talking about this for a while, but again, I think this is very important, especially if this sort of stuff starts to permeate across the United States. This is a longish clip, but it's Dr. Drew giving an example of how this thing could be applied and why it's so freaking terrible. This was before it was signed into law by Governor Gavin Newsom in California. But I'm going to play this probably in its entirety because I think it's a fantastic example. And then I promise we'll move on to Kamala saying that, hey, the hurricane aid should be based on whether or not you're black. Okay, check it out, watch this, and then we'll move on, I promise.
Explain how draconian this law is, this 2098 in the state of California. Literally would be the case that if I was evaluating a patient, let's say you come in, you're my patient, and you come in and you say, the CDC is recommending that I get this new Omicron vaccine, this bivalent vaccine. I'm concerned because what I'm reading suggests that it was only studied on mice. And if I say anything other than standard, what would it be? Standard empty slogans as specified by the academic and the bureaucratic structure, which would be, you're over 60 years old, it's recommended that you get this booster. If I said, follow the proto. If I said, for instance, you're right, it was studied on mice. I'm probably going to recommend it my patients over 65, certainly over 75. I think it's worth the risk. There is antecedent, very, very similar vaccines in influenza. And this is sort of how we do it with influenza every year. We don't test it necessarily in humans every year. So there's a protocol out there. But if you were 30 years old, I would say, there was just a study that came out in circulation this week that suggested that in men under 40, the risk of myocarditis is 5 times higher from the Moderna vaccine than from COVID itself. Right there. That would qualify as misinformation, even though it's factually accurate. It's merely me discussing what's available in the medical literature with my patient. Let's say that patient was angry for some reason. That patient could make an anonymous complaint to the state. And he or she could go home and go, you know what, mom and dad and brother and sister, you guys, I'd like you to make the complaint too. Here's what my complaint is. Why don't you modify a little bit? I heard something you said in the public the other day I didn't like either. So add that to it. Each one of those complaints would be dealt with as though a police report had been filed for a criminal action. It will require a full response with citations and will take months and months and may require hiring an attorney for each case. That is what they are doing. It is absolutely out of control. Now, I'm sure they're going to say, oh, no, would never use it like that. Of course they don't intend it.
Yeah, so I thought that was a pretty good example. If he stated something that's factually true, but hasn't made its way through the bureaucratic doctors at the state level, you can get your license suspended or disciplinary actions forced upon you. Couple more comments here. Eddie says, questioning COVID illegal, thinky face. That's not violating rights at all. Yeah, that seems to be the case. And then another plea for me to leave the state. Come to Arizona, Jobob. I'm in Arizona all the time. I really, really like it there. But anyways, we'll leave that there. I know this was a long, arduous journey through the ridiculousness in California, but I thought it was necessary, especially if stuff like that is going to be happening in your state. Know that it's happening, protest against it, whether that be calling the assembly's office 90 times a day to make sure it doesn't happen. Or you can just point to California. When this does become a problem and doctors are facing disciplinary action, because that will happen, when that happens, you can point to it and say, hey, look at how crazy this is. Let's not do that. We're going to stop. We're going to move on to Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, over the weekend, made some remarks that she is getting pushback from. Even liberal people are saying, whoa, not cool. But before that, I want to talk about, just really quick, briefly set up this idea of equity versus equality. Equality, everybody wants equal rights. And everybody agrees that that should be a thing. And if you don't agree with that, you're a crazy person. I don't want you participating in our democracy. But equality, great. Everybody agrees with equality. We'd like people to have equal rights under the law, no matter your race, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, all that stuff. You get equal rights. Equity, on the other hand, is not equality. They are different things, but they are used often interchangeably. If you don't know that, keep an eye out for it. Anytime you're watching any of your news media channels. Probably doesn't happen on Fox, but it happens all the time on CNN, all the time on MSNBC, and all the time on your big news outlets. And even some of your big news shows like 60 Minutes will interchange those words. They are not the same thing. Equity, unlike equality, which means the equal rights under the Constitution for anybody, no matter your anything, equity is everybody should end up equally. Now, if that means that statistically one race of people or gender of people doesn't make it out exactly the same as everybody else, we need to take down the people and promote those other people so that everyone ends up equal. That sort of thing has never worked in any sort of modernized society or any society in general. Equity is not the same thing as equality, so when people use the term equity, know what they're saying. Kamala Harris used the term equity when describing how hurricane aid should be distributed. Watch this clip from the Democratic Women's Convention thing. I don't really even know what this was. But Kamala Harris talking about the idea that hurricane aid should be distributed with equity, meaning that based on your race, you should get more aid versus no aid. Now, we'll obviously combat these with the normal sane people arguments issued by Ron DeSantis. Elon Musk even jumped into the fray here. But watch this clip. Oh, if you haven't already, I'm looking at this little number on the screen here. There's a couple thousand of you watching it. Would really appreciate you clicking the little like button and the little share button, or the little share button, either one, or just simply engaging with the content in general. Just give us a comment. Let us know what you think. Did you know the definition of equity versus equality? Did you know that those are two different things? Do you see it in your news media, in your print media? Let us know what you think in the comment section. Anyways, without further ado, here's Kamala Harris being racist. That's what she's doing. Check it out.
On the point that you made about disparities, when I was district attorney of San Francisco, I was elected in 2003. I started one of the first environmental justice units of any DA's office in the country focused on this issue, and in particular on the disparities, as you have described rightly, which is that it is our lowest income communities and our communities of color that are most impacted by these extreme conditions and impacted by issues that are not of their own making. And so absolutely. And so we have to address this in a way that is about giving resources based on equity, understanding that we fight for equality, but we also need to fight for equity, understanding not everyone starts out at the same place. And if we want people to be in an equal place, sometimes we have to take into account those disparities and do that work.
Which is racist. If people aren't in an equal place, and Democrats will try to use statistics, which we can get into that whole thing. Have you ever heard the term, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics, meaning that statistics can be the most misleading thing ever in any sort of argument. But she makes the case that, well, if people aren't starting off in the same place and therefore aren't equal towards the latter part of their life or just history in general, we should give them preferential treatment, and therefore We should play the race card when we're talking about who gets hurricane aid first. Now, clearly, that's not okay, and a lot of people jumped into the oh, shoot. I didn't pull this guy's name. Was this DeSantis? I think this might have been DeSantis. I pulled this piece from the New York Post. If a hurricane hits a state, we should expect the government to help all of those people affected, black, brown, white, purple, green. Exactly correct. It shouldn't matter what your race is. You should get aid dependent on who needs it the most. If let's just say, an Indian family's house is underwater, but given the fact that Indians, I think, generally make the most money out of all of the, if you want to categorize people by race, I don't know why we do that, but if you would like to do that, I believe Indians and Indian immigrants make more money than pretty much everybody statistically, and I know I just said that statistics are lies for the most part, but if an Indian family's house is completely underwater, and I don't know, let's pick another marginalized community. A transgender's house had a branch broken off. Would that mean, Kamala, that you would like to send the landscapers to the transgender house before you send aid to the Indian household? Doesn't seem to make much sense. It seems like you should divvy out aid based on need, and anything outside of that would be racist, Miss Vice President. Elon Musk, the world's richest man, even chimed in, saying resource allocation should be according to the greatest need, not race or anything else. That is completely obvious. Robert in the comment section said, what she said is not equality. Correct. Sandra said, equity is impossible in reality. Equality is constitutional. Amen. Yes, we all agree. Thank you. That's just it. Kamala Harris, again, says something racist, as a lot of super lefty, I don't even want to say Democrats, because that's not fair to the sane Democrats out there, but a lot of your lefty woke people say racist things all the time that are praised by the quote-unquote anti-racists. It's weird to me. I also want to clear this up. I know I think I said something along the lines of, like, if you don't believe in equity, I don't like you and I don't want you participating in our democracy. And several people, including Thalian Othar, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Sorry about that. He says, we live in a constitutional democratic republic, not a democracy. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm just using the terms that are often used because for some reason people aren't taught in their schools anymore that we are a constitutional republic and not a direct democracy. So you're right. I apologize in case I confused anybody based on that. But, you know. Anyways. All right. Geez, dang it. We're getting really short on time here. Should I save this for tomorrow? I feel like I should. There's a huge snag with the student loan debt forgiveness cancellation thing that we'll talk about in depth tomorrow, because I feel like I don't want to give that short shrift here because it's super important. And Joe Biden kind of shooting himself in the foot. Geez. So let's read some comments. Becky says, be sure to claim trans status on FEMA forms. Yeah, that, according to Kamala Harris, that would work. Let's see. There's a lot of people saying that she's a disgrace. All yada 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 yada. Somebody says somebody else also agreed that what she said is racist. Her and several other people. Okay, that's about it. Pretty much everybody's saying very mean things towards the Vice President of the United States. Interestingly enough, I think there was a poll that came out late last week that said something along the lines of Democrats, when looking for a 2024 contender, Kamala Harris is at the top of the ticket. Look, I know a lot of you probably don't like Kamala Harris. I'm not a big fan of her policy or her as a person in general. Having said that, please run. And also, DNC, please, for the love of God, put Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket in 2024. If Kamala Harris runs for president in 2024, an 8-year-old child would win that election. Kamala Harris could not get elected dog catcher of the local county, let alone president of the United States. So with that being said, I know a lot of you dislike her, but if she were the Democratic nominee for president of the United States, she will lose. And whoever is put up against her on the other side of the aisle will stroll into the White House seemingly unopposed. So do it, Kamala. Run for president. And DNC, elect her. Make her the nominee. It would be historic. You can do it. Anyways, that's going to do it for us today. Appreciate you checking in on Daily Caller live show each and every morning here on all of the Daily Caller platforms. If you haven't already, give me a follow on any of your social media platforms. I would appreciate you doing so. Just type in JOBOB. I do have to fix this freaking Chiron. How long has it been? Somebody in the comment section who's been watching every single day for the last year, let me know how long it's been that I've been saying this is wrong. I do have to fix it now, though, because I do have to add the getter symbol, which is just the same as Instagram. So maybe we'll just put that thing there and not change the Facebook Chiron. Facebook Chiron is wrong. That's what I'm getting at here. If you're new to the show and you haven't been watching for the last 6 months, that's fine. Every single day I bring up the fact that the Facebook Chiron @ symbol is wrong. Just type in JOBOB. I'm too lazy to fix it. You'll find me on any of your social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Getter, YouTube, True Social, all of them. You can give me a follow there. Let me see. And also, let's see. I'm trying to think of what needs to be said here regarding my tour schedule or public appearance speech stuff. Bottom line is I'd love to meet a lot of you in person. I think we're going to be traversing the country over the next couple months. A couple dates added. I got to put a calendar out. I'm going to do that. I'm going to make it a point tomorrow. I'll have a full-blown calendar of where we are because I know I mentioned that all on the show here, but let's see, this Friday, we're in Norco, California. Next Wednesday, we're in Austin, Texas, then back in Newport Beach, California, the Friday after that. And then, South Dakota at the end of the month, Michigan in the middle of November, Kentucky also in the middle of November. If any of those places are places that you live, I would love to see your smiling, brimming faces at any of those locations and more to come. But eventually, I will get a list out of where we're going to be because, again, I do love meeting you and saying hello. Wherever we're at. That's going to do it for us today. We will get to that Joe Biden student loan crisis thing later on tomorrow. If anything else happens in the news, we will keep you afloat. See you then. Same time, same place. God bless America.